Welcome to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. I'm your host, Valerie McDonald, and for over a decade, I've worked as a sex and couples therapist because intimacy used to feel really overwhelming for me. I felt a lot of pressure to perform, I was disconnected from my body, and I often felt like desire was out of reach for me. But through my own trauma work, I stopped checking out of my body and started feeling connected to it again. I learned what it's like to experience intimacy without fear, without shutting down, and without numbing out. Now I'm on a mission to help you do the same thing. This podcast exists because trauma doesn't get the last word. You can learn how to calm your body, change the story you've been carrying, and rebuild real connection. First with yourself and then with the people you love. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people are starting to recognize in themselves, but don't fully understand yet. So you've probably heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response as it relates to your nervous system's automatic response when trying to protect you. But a less talked about trauma response, and one that was added to the literature on trauma in the early 2000s, is the Fawn response. So fawning looks like being the easy partner, avoiding conflict, saying yes when you really mean no, or prioritizing your partner's needs over your own. Sometimes it's struggling to ask for what you want, or feeling responsible for your partner's emotions. But fawning is not your personality. It's a survival strategy your nervous system learned. And while it may help you feel safe in the moment, it often creates deep disconnection in romantic relationships over time. So today I'm going to break this down in a way that helps you understand what fawning actually is, how it connects to a concept called self-silencing, how it shows up as an attachment pattern, how it can cause us to suppress our emotions, and what it looks like in relationships. Also, I'll talk about how you can start shifting it without overwhelming your nervous system. The Fawn response is a trauma-based survival strategy where someone maintains safety by staying agreeable, accommodating, and attuned to others' needs. Instead of fighting or withdrawing, your body learns to stay safe by keeping other people comfortable. So if you identify as a people pleaser, you're most likely engaging in these behaviors in your relationships. This concept comes from trauma theory and has been widely discussed in clinical work, especially by trauma therapists like Pete Walker. But when we look at research, fawning overlaps with several well-established psychological constructs. One of the closest ones is something known as self-silencing. Research shows that self-silencing involves suppressing your needs, thoughts, or emotions in order to maintain connection or avoid conflict. And this has been strongly linked to depression, relationship dissatisfaction, and loss of identity. So when we talk about fawning, we're not just talking about people-pleasing. We're talking about a deeper pattern where your nervous system has learned that expressing your needs is risky. And your pursuit of connection tends to outweigh your needs every time. Fawning doesn't exist in isolation. It's often connected to attachment patterns. From attachment theory, we know that people develop different strategies to maintain connection. Two of those strategies are hyperactivation, and this typically shows up if you are anxiously attached, where you're often seeking closeness, reassurance, and approval. Also, there's deactivation, which typically shows up if you're avoidantly attached, where you often suppress your needs and create distance from vulnerability. Fawning often overlaps with hyperactivation, but it also includes self-silencing, meaning instead of expressing your needs directly, you learn how to adapt to maintain connection with others. And another important piece here is emotional suppression. Research in emotional regulation shows that when you consistently suppress emotions, it reduces relationship satisfaction, it decreases intimacy, and increases internal stress. So, what's happening is you're not just hiding your needs, you're training your body to disconnect from them. So, unfortunately, fawning can really start to impact intimacy because fawning in relationships can look like emotional self silencing, meaning you don't speak up when something hurts you. Instead, you minimize your feelings, or you tell yourself it's not a big deal, so you'll just suck it up. It can also show up as over accommodation. You adjust your preferences, opinions, and needs to match your partner's. But over time, this creates a dynamic where one person's needs become central and the other person slowly disappear. And you may also experience difficulty setting boundaries. You might feel guilty when saying no, or you may incessantly worry about disappointing your partner, or feel responsible for their reactions. And fawning also shows up during intimacy. This is something I repeatedly hear clients talk about in their sessions with me. Sexual fawning looks like saying yes to sex when you don't want it, pushing through sex in order to be a good partner, struggling to express what you do and don't enjoy during sex, prioritizing your partner's pleasure over your own, or feeling pressured to say yes to sex whenever your partner initiates. This often leads to disconnection from your body, low desire, resentment, or avoidance of intimacy altogether. And while externally you may look calm, agreeable, and supportive, internally there's often resentment brewing due to overwhelming frustration and extreme exhaustion, or wondering, why doesn't anyone show up for you? Fawning creates a very specific relational dynamic. Your partner experiences you as easygoing, someone who always keeps the peace and flexible. But what they don't experience is the depth of your emotional world. So they're relating to a version of you that feels safer and easier. But this version doesn't embrace the entirety of what makes you authentic. And over time, this leads to emotional distance, lack of clarity around your needs and wants, an imbalance in effort, and again, decreased sexual desire. Because intimacy requires honesty, respect for boundaries, and vulnerability. And those things feel unsafe when your nervous system is wired for fawning. Research consistently shows that emotional suppression reduces relationship closeness, and unexpressed needs often lead to dissatisfaction and ultimately feeling alone even in the presence of your partner. Intimacy grows when one partner shares something real and the other partner responds in a way that feels understanding, validating, and caring. That's what we call responsiveness. But if you're self-silencing, if you're not expressing your needs, your feelings, or your truth, then there's nothing for your partner to respond to. So even if your partner is capable of being responsive, they don't have the opportunity to actually show you. And over time, this creates a painful dynamic where you stay connected on the surface, but you don't feel deeply known. And your partner may believe everything is fine. So when you silence yourself to maintain connection, you may maintain the relationship, but you lose the intimacy that comes from being seen and responded to. And if this goes on long enough, resentment shows up, and when you finally become so frustrated and exhausted, you may decide to disconnect entirely. And not only from your partner, y'all, but from your ability to be sexually free and expressive. So it's important to know that you cannot force yourself out of fawning, because it's a nervous system response showing up to protect you. But you can focus on small, subtle shifts that will ultimately change the intensity of fawning and help you become more aware of it so that it's no longer your default response. So what can you do? First, you can build awareness without judgment. Start noticing when you respond with a yes, when you really mean no, when you minimize your feelings, and when you feel responsible for your partner's emotions. As I've discussed in past podcast episodes, awareness is the first step in shifting any pattern. You can also practice naming low-stakes preferences. So instead of going straight into more vulnerable or emotionally loaded conversations, start with small, lower stakes moments of honesties. Some examples are saying things like, I'd rather stay in tonight. Or, I actually don't like watching that. Can we pick something else? Or, I'd like something different for dinner. This helps your nervous system learn it's safe to have preferences. But it's also important to note that you want your partner to have the capacity to handle these lower stakes preferences with care. Because if they don't, you'll struggle to discuss even more vulnerable truths in the future. So pay attention to how they respond. And if it doesn't feel good to you, let them know that you want to be more honest with them, but you're struggling to feel comfortable doing so due to the fear that they won't respond with love and attention. You can also track your body and not just your thoughts. Suppressing your emotions disconnects you from your body. So begin asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? And where do I feel it? Do I feel open or do I feel tense? This helps build internal awareness while also helping to decrease the intensity of how you experience the emotion. When you can name the emotion and locate where it sits in your body, research shows that this process helps you to process and better regulate your emotional experiences. This is where the phrase, name it to tame it, comes into play. While it doesn't necessarily make the emotion disappear immediately, it can reduce feeling overwhelmed by them and increase clarity and create more space to respond intentionally instead of reacting automatically. You can also redefine safety in relationships. Many people equate safety with no conflict, but real safety includes being able to express your needs, being heard, and being respected. Start asking yourself, do I feel safe being honest with my partner? And if the answer is no, get curious about why. Is it because it feels difficult for your partner to acknowledge or validate what you share? If that's the case, it may be less about whether you're expressing your needs and more about learning how to create conversations where honesty and vulnerability can be met with care, understanding, and a willingness to respond. And finally, you can practice small moments of truth. You don't need to unload everything at once, though, but you can practice small moments of expressing your truth. Statements like, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I could use more support right now. These small moments help to rebuild intimacy. So if you recognize yourself in this episode, remember that fawning is not weakness or being too needy, and is definitely not a personality flaw. Like many of the other concepts I discuss in this podcast, it's a survival strategy your nervous system learned to protect you. But over time, it can cause you to lose connection to yourself and to struggle with expressing your true identity in relationships. Healing is not about becoming someone completely different. It's about slowly learning that you can stay connected without abandoning yourself. And that's where real intimacy begins. Thank you so much for being here. If this episode resonated with you and you'd like support working through patterns like this, you can head over to risetointimacy.com to learn more about working with me. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, know that healing is possible and you don't have to do it alone. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a rating and review for us at ratethispodcast.com/rise. It really helps others find us, and I'm so grateful for all your support. You can learn more about my coaching packages for individuals and couples at risetointimacy.com. And remember, sex therapy isn't for people who are broken. It's for people brave enough to look beneath the surface.